we continue from the last example. Okay, now we have the web form using the web user controls. So now, what if we click this button without having entered any value here? So if we do this, so basically we will get an error message because it needs to be validated. So what we are going to do today is that we are going to add at least a required field validator to that controls. So I stop the execution. Okay, now when we are using the user controls, so basically what we change is that we add the input validation controls to the user controls, not to the web form one. For example, we have web form 1, so we are not going to put the validation controls here. So but what we are going to do is that we are going to go to the user control itself. So now this is our user controls. So if I go to the design, so this is the user controls. So for what we are going to do now is that before we add validation controls here, you must make sure that you have added a certain XML to the web config. So if I open here, I have added this earlier. So within the configuration, you must add these app settings, and you need to add the key validation settings unobtrusive validation mode and value equals to none. So if you have not done so, please add this first. Okay, please add this first and make sure that you save the web config. Okay, now what we are going to do is that I'm going to add two required field validator controls here next to these two text boxes here. So for each of these text box, I have one required field validator. So basically what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to go to my toolbox. Okay, now the validation control is here. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually drag this one next to this. Okay, now because it goes down because we have this table cell here, so no worries. So what we are going to do is that we are going to go to our code. Okay, this is our source. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to actually enter this so that we can see. Okay, now for the first this one, so I'm going to change the ID. So this I'm going to change to RFV1. Okay, RFV1 is for the text number 1. Okay, here I do not need this error message here. So now the error message that I'm going to put here is just an asterisk, the star. Okay. Okay, now the next thing is that something that you should not forget is that you need to add the property control to validate. Okay, you can type this or just easily make sure that you highlight this. Okay, in this property box here, okay, in the solution explorer, look for control to validate. Okay, here we have control to validate. Okay, we select. So now this is for txt number 1. So select this. Now we have control to validate txt number 1. Okay, so I'm going to enter this. So just to make sure that it's easier for you to see. Okay, let's say this is just a matter of readjusting. Okay, now you can see everything here. Control to validate. Okay, now so if I am to actually do it for the txt number 2, the second text box, so an easier way is for you just to copy this and I'm going to paste this here. Okay, so basically if you look here, you can see that we have a duplicate here, double, but the only thing that we need to change here is that we need to change the ID. So if the first one is RFV 1, okay, now this is RFV 2, and the control to validate is TXT number 2. Okay, now we have this one. Okay, now let us save everything. Okay, although yes, we know that we need to add the same one to the other user control, but let us test. Okay, what happens if we add fully one, but we haven't added to the other user controls? Okay, now I'm going to the web form. Okay, I'm going to run this. Okay, let execute. Okay, so basically what will happen now is that if I am to actually click this button without actually inputting anything, yes, we got the asterisk here. So now what happens, this one, I did not actually add the asterisk, I did not add the validation control, but I click this calculate. Okay, you can see that nothing happens. Okay, let's say that if I am to actually add some values here, let's say just some values. Okay, let's say I have a weight, I have a height. So now I'm going to click this calculate button here. Now I'm clicking this. You can see that nothing comes out. So there's no output here. Okay, so if what we understand is that if you have two controls, one is currently like this, meaning that there is input validation. Okay, once we click, it triggered, meaning that there is an error here, meaning that we did not input anything. So basically, although you actually add these values, and these values are perfectly acceptable, and you click, it is still considered, meaning that you haven't added anything here. So meaning that it does not calculate. So the only thing now in this situation, if I am to actually add, let's say some numbers, let's say 12, and the second numbers is like 5. Okay, now if I am to calculate here, this counts, and only after there's no error message, the input validation has not been triggered, only then I can calculate this BMI, so the second control. So meaning that this is not acceptable. So meaning that if you have multiple user controls on the same web form, although it is a different user controls, so you need to actually have the input validation controls to all the controls. Okay, so basically you can see that we need to have this. So what we are going to do next is that I'm going to add the required field validator here for these two controls. Okay, so let me stop the execution. So what I'm going to do is that because I'm being lazy here, so basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going just to go to the source of the first one. Okay, just now we have actually created this one. Okay, we have created this one, required field validator. So I'm going to copy this. So now I go to the body mass index user control. Okay, now I'm going to actually add this here. Okay, see, now we have this one, but of course I'm going to actually change the ID, because basically we wouldn't want to have the same ones with the first control. So let's say this is for weight. Okay, this is for weight. So I'm going to give this RFB weight, and the control to validate is txt. Wait, so this is referring to this text box. Okay, now once I have done that, okay, similarly I can just copy this part and paste this here. Now the ID, so let me change the ID. So the ID would be appropriate that we name this RFV height, HEIGHT, because this is for the height, and the control to validate is XTHEIGHT. Okay, now we have this one, so everything looks okay. Okay, let us try now whether if this is enough for us to resolve the problem and to make sure that this particular page, okay, this web form is properly validated. So I'm going to web form 1. Okay, let us run this. Okay, now if I do not enter anything. Okay, now there is a problem here. You see, when I click this one, just the average of two numbers, so it triggers the whole page. So meaning that here it also shows that the input validation has not been done, although I haven't done anything here. So I just click this one. So if I am to say put some values here, let's say 12, this is 5, I'm going to calculate this. You can see that still, although I have both input validation controls for both the user controls, so meaning that this is still because I do not want to enter this here, so still it triggers the input validation error message here. See, so only when actually I add something here, fully add, only this it can run, and this one also it is possible. So now you can see is that even though we have added both the input validation controls to both the user controls, meaning that we have added here to calculate average and also to calculate the BMI, basically it is still not enough. So basically what should we do? Okay, let me stop this. Okay, so basically what we need is that we need to add something here. Okay, so basically let me go to the average. Okay, this is the calculate the average of two numbers user control. Now look at this button here. So basically what we want to tell this particular whatever page that will host this user control is that this button, okay, the input validation is related to just this button, not other buttons on the page. So although you have two user controls, there will be two buttons. We want these user controls to be associated with just this button. Okay, with just this button, not the other button. Okay, so what do we do? So basically what we can do is that first, I'm showing you the easy way, and then I'm going to show the source. Okay, now let us just click this button. Okay, click this button. Okay, let us scroll. Okay, if you scroll slowly, okay, there is one property, validation group. Okay, this is in the V. Okay, is under the V, validation group. Now this is the validation group. Okay, now here there is a message here. Okay, let me resize this so that you can see. Okay, the validation group, it describes the group that should be validated when the control causes a postback. So meaning that postback means that when you click a button, it triggers what we call a postback. Okay, meaning that you post something to the server and the server will actually pass it back to the page. Okay, now we need to actually create a group. By default, there's no group here. So basically, we need to give a name to a group. Okay, now for this control, this calculate button for the average. So I'm going to name this button for, this is let's say average. Okay, so we name the group validation group average. Okay, so when we name this validation group average, so if I am to go to the source, okay, now this is the button. Okay, let me scroll this. Okay, let me scroll this. You will see that here it adds validation group equals to average. Okay, within the button here. Okay, within the button. So basically, okay, now that is step number 1. Okay, now for step number 2, what we need is that we need to go to the validation itself. So meaning that now we have this one and this one. Okay, now for easier, so let us go to the design. Okay, let me actually just click on this validator here, the first one. Okay, now under this, you also need to look for the validation group. So meaning that here we have the validation group. So because this will refer to this button, now the name of the validation group for this button is average. So because this will be triggered by this, so basically here I will enter average. So this is the same name just now, this one and this one. Okay, so if we go to the source, now we can see that within the required field validator for the first one, we have the validation group equals to average. Okay, now the second one, you can do it similarly, meaning that you can highlight this and then go for the properties, or because we have done one, so it is an easy case just to copy this. Okay, we copy the whole of thing. Validation group equals to average. Average is encapsulated by double quote. I'm going to copy, Control C. Okay, now for the next one, this one, okay, I'm going to paste this here. Here. So now basically you can see that both these controls, we have the validation group equals to average, and this also equals to average. Okay, now this is for the first control. So let us save this first. Okay, now let us go to the second control. So now similarly for the second control, we will do something similar. So first, I'm going to actually click this calculate button. Okay, this calculate button. Now using the properties, I will actually scroll down. Okay, now here we have validation group. I'm going to key in. Okay, now let us give some name to this validation group. Now this is BMI, calculate body mass index. So I'm going to actually put the name as BMI here. Okay, and when we look at the source, you will notice that it has added validation group equals to BMI. Okay, now this is the first step. Now next, we need to go for the validation control itself. So here we highlight this, and similarly we scroll down within the property box in the solution explorer, look for validation group. So now this is the validation group. So we enter the name BMI. So this is the name of the validation group. Okay, and this one also. Okay, let us just do it here. This is also BMI. Okay, and if we look at the source, okay, yes, you will notice that this is the validation control, the first one. You see that it has added the validation group equals to BMI, and this is the second one. Okay, and also you have the validation group equals to BMI. So let us save everything. Okay, now let us try to run. So I click web form 1. So we run here. Okay, now let's say that let us try on the average. So now I haven't entered anything here, so but I'm going to click this calculate button. So let me click this. Okay, now you will notice that, see, this asterisk, which is the error message, has been displayed here. So but here there's nothing here, so meaning that this has not been triggered by clicking this. Okay, let's say that I click, I enter something just to enter the BMI. Okay, now I'm going to click this button. Okay, now you will notice that it will display this one, and here there is no error here. Okay, because basically on purpose, because we only want to key in this one. So meaning that if you have many controls on one page, okay, you can actually add the input validation controls that you want. Okay, in our example here is the required field validator, and we actually add the validation group property within the button, because the button is actually triggers the postback, and also the validation control. Okay, for example here, if I am to now, let's say still I'm going to click this one, yeah, it does not disturb this one. Okay, and if I am to enter just some numbers here, so everything is fine now, this calculate. So but if I do delete this, I click, yeah, there is validation here asking for you to enter something, but it does not disturb here. Okay, so basically this is how, okay, if you have a validation controls, okay, on one page and you have many buttons, this is how you assign, okay, the particular validation controls to a specific button. Okay, so now our examples just showing required field validator. So if you think that you want to add other validators, so basically the process is the same, meaning that you add the validators, but at the same time you need to actually link that validators with the specific control. So meaning that the control here, if you add something more here, something else, so you must add the same validation group with this button. Okay, so this is how you can actually control, you compartmentalize what validation controls that is linked to a very specific button, in case that you have many buttons on your platform. Okay, so this is another important aspect, okay, for you, that hopefully that you can use this accordingly. Okay, so this is for the use of input validation, especially when you have multiple buttons or controls that gives you some triggers the postback. In our case, based on the user controls.